A warm welcome to Disky Talk with Liolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I do ask that you please subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things Uefa Champions League final post-match analysis as Real Madrid won the UEFA Champions League final in Paris 1-0 against Liverpool. So, coming up then into this episode, we will then discuss the tactical post-match analysis. So the red team will represent Liverpool and then the blue team will represent Real Madrid. Coming up into this encounter then, Liverpool did line up then in their traditional 4-3-3, which they have been playing underneath the tutelage of Jurgen Klopp. So in goals, they started with Alisson at left back, Robertson, left-sided centre-back, you had Virgil van Dijk, right-sided centre-back, you had Konate, at right back, you had Trent Alexander-Arnold, Fabinho as the defensive midfielder, you had Thiago, you had Jordan Henderson, you had Luis Diaz, you had Mane, and then you had Mohamed Salah. So when you have a look at Liverpool then, and what they were trying to do then in possession of the ball. So when you have a look at Liverpool then with regards to their offensive scheme and the shape that they took up, it was somewhat then of a 2-3-5. So what you did see then from Liverpool is that you did have Diaz there, you had Robertson, you had Mane, and then you had Mohamed Salah, who would stay on the wide right channel, and then you had Trent Alexander-Arnold a lot of the times looking to occupy that right-sided half space. You then had Thiago, you had Jordan Henderson, and then you then had Fabinho in there. So with regards to Liverpool in possession of the ball, that's the shape that they took up a lot of the times. And when you have a look at their right side, that is where Liverpool is most strong with regards then to their wide overloads and their right-sided rotational play with regards then to how Jordan Henderson, Mohamed Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold look to interchange positions. So a lot of the times then they would be interchanging the right half space, the right wide channel, and then that advanced pocket of space within the right-sided half space. And when you do have a look at Liverpool in possession of the ball, especially within the first half, they kept the ball for large spells, and they were very dominant then in that regard. And when you also have a look at it, then Liverpool created numerous chances, and Liverpool on the day, in my opinion, were the more dominant team. They created more chances, they had more shots on goal. It's just that they just didn't have the quality within the final third. And then when you have a look at Liverpool without the ball with regards to how they look to press Real Madrid, so when you have a look at it then, Liverpool then they did look to press in a 4-4-2. So how it is then that their 4-4-2 would work is that you had Jordan Henderson looking to press right high up alongside Mane. And then you'd have Diaz there, you had Mohamed Salah, you had Thiago, you had Fabinho, then you had the back four there. So when Liverpool were looking to press, they were looking to press really high up, and that's the shape that they would take when they were looking to press high up. And then when Liverpool didn't have the ball within their own half, then they would be looking then to go to a mid block, sometimes a low block of a 4-5-1, where then the two wingers would be looking to tuck in, and then you'd still have Mane up front. But when you have a look at Liverpool overall, then I think in this game they were the more dominant team. It's just that they didn't have the quality within the final third, and they just couldn't get that goal. And credit also then does go to Thibuat Courtios, who in my opinion is the man of the match. He was phenomenal on the night, and he denied Liverpool multiple times, and Liverpool then just couldn't get that goal. And when you do have a look at a player who stood out for me from a Liverpool perspective, I have to say that it's Konate. When you have a look at Konate and how well he played in this game, especially considering then one of the most important encounters coming up into this final. It was always going to be Vinny versus Trent Alexander-Arnold down the right-hand side for Liverpool. So what was important then is that whenever Alexander-Arnold would vacate that space, there'd always be that hole left for Vini. And sometimes Vini then would go one-on-one with Konate. There is a time then when Vini would look to cut in, and Konate then was able to deal with that threat. And I think just throughout the game, Konate, in my opinion, was very, very solid from a defensive perspective. He also had a very tidy performance and very comfortable on the ball as well. Whenever then Real Madrid looked to put pressure on him, he was able then to bypass the first line of press and showcase that he is press resistant as well. So from a Liverpool perspective, the player that stood out for me was Konate. However, let's have a look then at Real Madrid with regards to how they went about things and the personalities that did start the game. So when you have a look at Real Madrid then, throughout the season, they have been playing a 4-3-3. However, Carlo Ancelotti has tweaked it whenever then he would come up against a very, very strong side. So he'd go to a 4-2-3-1 and start Valverde on the right-hand side as opposed to starting a natural right-wing player. So that then would allow him to have 4 natural midfielders. Whenever then Valverde would look to come inside, then they'll be looking to overload. You'd have Carvajal, who would then offer the width on the right-hand side. However, let's have a look at the personalities. In goals then, they started with Thibuat Courtios, so it was a 4-2-3-1. They started with Courtois in goals. At right back, you had Dani Carvajal, you had Eder Militao, you had David Alaba. At left back, you had Ferland Mendy. As the double pivot, you had Casemiro, you had Toni Kroos, you had Luka Modric as the furthest forward within the midfield and the most advanced midfielder. You had Valverde off the right, Benzema up top, and then you had Vini Jr. coming off the left-hand side. So when you look at Real Madrid then, for large parts of the game, they had to sit very deep within their own half, and they'd sit very deep then with a low block then, which would then be a 4-2-3-1 low block. So for large parts of the game, they looked to sit back, and they weren't looking to press Liverpool right high up. Instead, Real Madrid then were looking then to use offensive transitions and look then to counter-attack this Liverpool side. That's what they looked to do, and they were willing then to relinquish ball possession. So a lot of the times, that's what they looked like then when they were in their own half, and they'd have to sit in a very compact low to mid block. At times, I must say that from a tactical perspective, they were able to keep that discipline. However, whenever they were breached, that's when Thibaut Courtois would come then to their rescue. And then when you do have a look at Real Madrid in possession of the ball, how do they look? So when you have a look at it then, with regards to Real Madrid's offensive scheme. So Real Madrid's offensive scheme then was at times 2-3-5, at times a 2-2-6. Whenever then they would be looking then to push numbers into that front line and then looking then to have the numerical superiority against a Liverpool back line. So you'd have Benzema there. Like I mentioned, on the right-hand side, Valverde was looking to tuck into the right side of half space. You had Carvajal looking then to offer the width. And then you had Luka Modric. You had Toni Kroos. And then you had Casemiro there. And then on the left-hand side, you would have Vini Jr., and then Mendy. A lot of the times, Mendy was looking then to invert. So he'd come into that half space a lot of the time. That's what you would see. At times, they would interchange, where then you would see Vini would be tucked in, and then Mendy would be there. But a lot of the times then, it was Vini on the left-hand side, in the left wide channel, looking to keep the width. So a lot of the times then, this was more or less their offensive scheme. And then at times, you'd have Modric looking then to join and add numbers, and Vini would go, and then you'd have that. So somewhat of a 2-2-6 whenever then they did find themselves in Liverpool's half. And when you do have a look then at this Real Madrid side, then I think overall then Real Madrid's experience on the day came to show, because when you have a look at the fact that they didn't play their best football, and Real Madrid then didn't create a lot of chances. They didn't create clear-cut chances, and they didn't have a lot of shots on target. And when you do have a look at it then, the goal even then does come against the run of play with Valverde on the right-hand side, which is a shot come cross, which then finds Vini at the back post, and then he taps in. Another huge moment then, which occurred just before the halftime, was then the offside with regards to the deflection of Fabinho, which then finds Benzema, and then Benzema goes on to score. So when you have a look at it then, the rule is that then the deflection doesn't constitute as a deliberate attempt at play. So that is why then it gets adjudged offside, because then Fabinho is not attempting to pass the ball to Benzema, and then Benzema then is then left with just Robertson, so then he is adjudged to be offside, which then was a very controversial moment. And I know a lot of people then feel like this offside rule is very intricate and it is up for debate. But yeah, so when you have a look at the game, then it does then boil down to the fact that Real Madrid then were able to get that one big moment in the game where then Vini Jr. was able to finish. Liverpool had lots of ball possession. They controlled the game. They created a lot of chances, but they just couldn't get past Thibaut Courtois. When you have a look at it from a Real Madrid perspective, then the player that stood out for me was Thibaut Courtois. On the night, Thibaut Courtois is the difference. If Thibaut Courtois doesn't have the performance that he had, I think Liverpool would have won the final. But Thibaut Courtois was just absolutely phenomenal and pulled off some of the best saves that one could have possibly seen this season. And he was just, yeah, at the end of the day, Thibaut Courtois does win the UEFA Champions League for this Real Madrid side. So, ladies and gentlemen, then we have come then to the end of the season, so from UEFA Champions League perspective and from European football with regards to the league, that is the season. The season is wrapped up, and the last game then is UEFA Champions League final, where Real Madrid won 1-0 against Liverpool in Paris. Do let me know at home, what do you make of this final and how it played out? And what do you make then about that offside rule, which is very, very controversial? And do you agree with me when I say that Thibaut Courtois was the man of the match and was the difference then in tonight's encounter? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Disky Talk with Luyolo. Signing out.